Matthew Bell with Alzheimer'sProof.com. Today I wanted to go into some of the more exotic compounds. It's a little bit hard to pronounce some of these, but the body actually produces these compounds itself. And these compounds support cellular growth, nerve cell health, also called neuronal health. And it's just an interesting area of study because in other videos, of course, I have talked about diet, I've talked about exercise, I've talked about herbal supplements, I've talked about pharmaceuticals, I've talked about a number of things that you can do with your body or add to your body. But in this case, these are actually compounds that your body creates or generates itself. This isn't to say that this is completely isolated from some of the other conversations, because it's going to turn out, just as a sneak peek, that diet, exercise, and general health are going to support your body's ability to produce these chemicals. But I thought I would just kind of get into it. There's really 4 of these compounds, and again, these chemicals are a bit difficult to pronounce. They're generally referred to by initials. So the first one is BDNF, that is to say, Brain-Derived Neurotropic Factor. The second, FGF-2, Fibroblast Growth Factor number 2. IGF-1 is the third. That stands for Insulin-like Growth Factor 1. And the fourth and final of these that I'm going to go into here is one that is called, and this is the hardest of them all, VEGF, which stands for Vascular Endothelial Growth Factor. Now, why are these things important? Well, as you know, if you are dealing with Alzheimer's or if you've done any research on the topic, between 5 and 6 million people have Alzheimer's disease, and that is just in the United States alone. In fact, it's listed as the 6th leading cause of death in the United States from non-homicidal causes. Around 10% of people over the age of 65 are going to have some kind of cognitive impairment. And by the age of 80, that number, 10%, goes up to 50%. In another video, I have gone into some of the candidate causes for Alzheimer's disease. And I'm not going to repeat those here. I invite you to check that out. I'll put a link in the description. Having a handle on what the causes, or at least the potential causes are. The scientists are not sure. There's no definitive statement on this, but having a general idea of what types of causes are in the vicinity or at least in the realm of possibility is essential for so many conversations about Alzheimer's disease. I encourage you to familiarize yourself with the possible causes, and one way of doing that, which I hope is accessible and understandable, is the video that I have created myself, and again, the link will be in the description. But a number of these, just to rehearse them because they'll be relevant, is number 1 is the accumulation of protein gunk in the brain. These are called plaques and tangles. There's also, number 2, deficiencies in neurotransmitters like acetylcholine. There are also what are called comorbidities, that is to say, other conditions or diseases or ailments that have a higher correlation with Alzheimer's disease than a person who has no condition. These will include things like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, imbalances in hormones, things like testosterone, estrogen. Chronic inflammation is another one. Oxidation or oxidative stress, and then stress in general, which is related to a particular hormone called cortisol. Now, there are a number of suggested interventions, and again, we've gotten into these in other videos. I've done informational videos and articles on pharmaceuticals, on herbs. I'm in the process of releasing my top 25 list of herbal interventions, and this is going to be over the course of 3 or more videos. Diet is essential. I've done a number of articles, including a fairly exhaustive list of entrants on the dietary list that's called the Mind Diet, which is specialized in trying to support cognitive and brain health. But once again, the focus of this video are those growth factors and neurotropic factors and other things that the body itself is capable of producing. And this is interesting because essentially these things are basically your body's own way of supporting cognitive function and brain health. Now let me go through them in order. So the first one was Brain-Derived Neurotropic Factor, or BDNF. And this is believed to play a role in neurogenesis or neurogenesis, and that is to say the genesis or the generating, the creating of nerve cells, that is neurons. It is related to their growth and development. Now in general, a neurotropic factor is a biomolecule that is able to support cellular growth, cellular survival. So these are crucial. the body creates these, and the aging process is believed to be related to these things in ways that are still mysterious, but you see a decline. So for instance, in young children, these growth factors are just out of control. But in older adults, they start to decline until in old age, they're no longer present in great enough quantities to stop the dying process, essentially, in the aging process. And so the whole point of emphasizing these growth factors is that you might be able, through changes in diet, changes in exercise, improvements in general health and well-being, to support your body's ability to promote and to generate these chemicals to keep its own brain function going for longer. So in general, this BDNF factor is associated with healthy nerve function, healthy nerve connectivity, healthy brain function. Now the second, again, was the fibroblast growth factor number 2, also referred to as the basic fibroblast growth factor. This stimulates, again, the growth of brain tissue. It's another protein. Growth factors, again, stimulate growth, just as it sounds like. They stimulate cell growth, cell healing, and repair. So obviously this is relevant for Alzheimer's disease when neuronal death is part and parcel of Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia and cognitive impairment. Now the next one, the insulin-like growth factor, is actually a hormone, but it is structurally similar to insulin, which is why it's called insulin-like. In children, again, during childhood growth, the insulin-like growth factor is hugely important in normal development. But in older adults, it decreases. However, when it is present, it does have an anabolic effect. So this is often discussed in fitness circles, bodybuilding circles, because of the attempt to harness its anabolizing or anabolic effects. And when you think about what that means, anabolic simply means building up. It's the body's construction, as opposed to catabolic, which is a tearing down of body structures. So catabolism is a destruction of body tissue, and anabolism is an increase or a growth in that. And when it's applied to the brain, I think you can see the hope that the insulin-like growth factor may be able to promote the growth of structures in the brain and to stop their tearing down or to stop their catabolism and promote their anabolism. It also facilitates the brain's use of glucose. So in another place we talked, in the cause video, I think, we talked about the possibility that Alzheimer's was related to an inefficiency that develops in the brain with respect to energy consumption. And this is where people kind of, one stream of individuals will go into coconut oil and its possible uses as an alternative energy source for the brain. But in this case, we should note that the IGF factor is actually able to help promote glucose use in the brain. Now the fourth and final one, of course, was the vascular endothelial growth factor. Now this one is also a protein. It stimulates the growth, the formation, the connectivity of blood tissues and blood vessels. And another possible cause of Alzheimer's disease is hypoxia and poor circulation. It's often the case that Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia you may experience or notice onset of these after some kind of a stroke or an event where the blood flow to the brain is cut off and the brain is dealing with a low oxygen situation, and that can cause various different things, but one of them is infarction of brain tissue. That is to say, the death of brain tissue. It's called an ischemia because it reduces the blood flow, and so this VEGF factor is helping to promote healthy circulation, healthy blood flow, and the like of that. So the question really then is once we know what these are, it's not like you're going to go out necessarily and buy a capsule that's going to have these growth factors and you're going to pop it. The body has the ability of producing these itself, and my understanding is that attempts to supplement with some of these in terms of oral supplementation, they often get obliterated in the digestive tract. So really, the preferable option is for you to support your body's ability to produce its own growth factors and so on. And how do you do that? Well, diet. See my video on the Mind Diet. I've got instructions on my website, alzheimersproof.com, for how you can kind of build up a dietary or nutritional plan that can help to support brain function and cognition. But in general, we're talking green leafy vegetables, berries, fruits of other kind, but especially berries, white meats, for example, poultry, no red meat, fish that's healthy fish, not fish that is going to have high mercury content like some of the types of tuna and other things. Some tuna is good, some isn't. Oils like olive oil, healthy oil, fish oil. You're going to want to include things like antioxidants, for example, as found in green tea, vitamin C. There are what's called branched-chain amino acids, or BCAAs. Some sources indicate that supplementing with BCAAs might be beneficial. There will be herbal supplements, and again, I am going through 25, but the ones that I'll point out now, I'll give you 3 of the most important. Ginkgo, rosemary, turmeric. Turmeric is a powerhouse. It is an anti-inflammatory. The ginkgo and rosemary herbs are both noted for their ability to stimulate brain function. And then even kind of an odd one here, but caffeine. So in some articles I read previously, Parkinson's, drinking coffee was actually associated with a reduced risk, slightly reduced risk of Parkinson's disease. Now you want to be careful because coffee and the like of that can dehydrate you. It is a diuretic, but caffeine, apparently in moderation, can promote health, can actually support a healthy blood-brain barrier, and it can possibly also help to reduce the level of amyloid proteins. That was the protein junk that we were talking about earlier. Now, exercise. Let's say a few things. I'm going to have a couple of videos on this. I am reaching out to an associate of mine that is an expert in exercise and fitness, and hopefully I'll have some additional content for you shortly on that that'll be more instructive. But in this case, I'll just simply mention that there are a number of different types of activity. Of course, you can have high intensity, low intensity, you can do weightlifting, you can do cardiovascular types of activities, aerobics, but in general, it seems like the bottom line, there are a number of various intensities. If you kind of vary what you're able to do in terms of exercise, you'll probably get the most robust effect. But for example, low intensity cardiovascular training can promote the increase of BDNF, but high intensity can support the increase of all of the ones that we named: BDNF, FGF-2, IGF-1, and VEGF. Plus, it can increase the human growth hormone, which is associated with increased brain mass. Now, resistance training is another one. This is going to also promote the same, all of the growth factors that we discussed, plus the human growth hormone. And in general, exercise also promotes and improves the efficiency of the blood-brain barrier. And if you can help your body to keep crud basically out of your brain, it's going to be an essential component to overall cognitive and brain health throughout the whole of your life. So it depends on the situation you're in, and we'll get into that more in the exercise videos. If you are in a situation of trying to avoid Alzheimer's, then by all means, please look into ways that you can promote your health by improving diet, by improving your exercise. But if you're already experiencing mild cognitive impairment or in the early stages of Alzheimer's, you too can still benefit from exercise. It may have to be modulated and kind of modified in the way that it is handled, but it can improve your brain health, it can improve memory, it can improve your mood by decreasing agitation and depression. And in addition to that, it can help to reduce the risk of falls and other things that sometimes afflict people as they grow older. Now, how much exercise is recommended? Let me add one more thing. That exercise can also promote mood-improving hormones and also can improve the function of neurotransmitters in the brain. And these include things like dopamine, GABA, and I won't try and pronounce the entire thing that stands for, but GABA, glutamate, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Exercise can help to regulate these and to make sure that your body's levels of these hormones are optimal. How much exercise do you require? Well, traditionally, we have heard that 30 minutes of exercise 2 or 3 times a week is going to be optimal. But sometimes what people then get into is they think, well, I will wait until I have 30 minutes of time, and then they pass over 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute intervals that could have been used for some exercise, and they pass those over and then they end up doing nothing. So another researcher has actually indicated that 8 to 12 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes, just do something is better than doing nothing, and it can register, it can result in at least some improvement, and at least you get into the habit of doing something, your body starts to make those changes. And so one of the recommendations would just be, even if you can't devote 30 minutes, which is optimal, 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a week, do what you can, even if it's only 10 minutes a day. But realize that there are a couple of things. First of all, exercise has to be a supplement to proper diet and nutrition. If you are eating poorly, if you are not giving your body the nutrients that it needs, then exercise puts an additional stress on the body that your body may not be able to take. As with any exercise program, you want to start with very light weights. You want to consult your physician or your medical practitioner to make sure that you have the go-ahead, the green light to actually start an exercise program. But one other thing to consider is the fact that exercise and diet, both, are going to be of limited effectiveness if you don't control the amount of stress in your life, or at least the reactions that you have to stress. You need to have some mechanisms in place for stress reduction and for controlling mood. And that basically, again, is going to refer to the damaging effects or the catabolic effects of the hormone cortisol. This is not the place to get into that. I'll get into that in another video. Finally, let me just say, as by way of disclaimer, I am not a medical practitioner. I am not a nutritionist, a dietitian. I am not an exercise expert. I'm not a fitness expert or a personal trainer of any kind. This is not to be construed as advice about medicine or exercise or diet or any of it. It is simply for general informational or entertainment purposes only. These are research leads. This is the way I approach basically everything. Is I am simply trying to give you the overflow of the research that I've done, both for myself and for when I was caring for my dad. If you found something of use in this video, please like it. Please subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell to be alerted to new content when it becomes available. I thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again in other videos, including some of the ones that I discussed. If they're of interest to you, please check back, because I will be posting on the herbs, the exercises, and a lot of other stuff very shortly. Thank you so much.